Now I have the distinct honor and privilege of introducing Dr. Steve Smutko, Professor Emeritus at the Hobbs School of Environment and Natural Resources in the University of Wyoming. Students at UW are still fortunate to have him as a temporary lecturer in negotiation. Of course, he also taught and facilitated with the Leadership Wyoming for many years as well. Steve might know me from the one time I took his class for a week before I had to drop it because of a time conflict. Steve has designed, convened, and facilitated numerous public policy decision processes on natural resources issues in the Rocky Mountain West and the Southeast United States. So, with great delight, please help me welcome Dr. Smutko to the stage.
All right, well, good morning. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation. So I'm a professor emeritus. What does that mean? I retired a couple years ago. And my wife was tired of Wyoming winters, so we moved to a milder climate and now live in a coastal community. So it's always wonderful and great to come back because I'm a Rocky Mountain guy by birth, and we now live near the Cascades. It's a little different. So I love coming back to Laramie. So thanks for the invitation. It's great to be here. So what I'm going to do today, do I have a clicker? I do. Okay. So I'm going to be talking about negotiation. All right. Maybe a little bit more background about why I'm here and why I can talk about negotiation. So I've, through the Hobbs School of Environment and Natural Resources and the Ruckelshaus Institute, and also when I was at North Carolina State University, I ran a program in which I brought people together to negotiate on environment and natural resource policy and management issues, which can get really thorny, really sticky. And bringing people from all spectrums together to actually negotiate on what should happen, right? What are we going to see come out of a particular policy, or how are we going to manage this resource? So I've engaged in, dozens of multi-party negotiations over my career. I also teach negotiation here at the university, and as Austin mentioned, have been over the number of years working with Leadership Wyoming on also doing a negotiation seminar as well. So my approach to negotiation, and what I want to work with you all on, is we're going to have a little fun with this today. We're going to play a card game. So it's a game theory game in which you're going to engage in like a card game, and then from that we're going to draw a whole bunch of lessons from it. It's really rich and a way to think about negotiation. I'm going to talk a little bit about some basic elements of principled negotiation. And I talk about principled negotiation, and I use that term strictly because it means something. And this morning's ethics panel really queued it up. All right, so we can negotiate in an unprincipled manner, or we can negotiate in a principled manner. And I'll talk about that, what that actually means. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how to create value in negotiation. The notion is we're not simply distributing value. So when we buy let's say a car, and we're negotiating on price, that's simply distributing value, right? I'm going to buy a car, I want a low price, somebody's going to sell me their car, they want a high price, and we find some place in the middle. No value has been created, we're simply distributing that. What we do through principled negotiation is create value, and I'll talk about sort of how we do that. So I was sent 4 questions from the students who put this together, and I'll address them not specifically, so I want you to sort of think about what these questions are, and have I addressed them? Have I answered them? So the first question is, so it involves people from all spectrums, and what strategies help you to negotiate effectively when other people are coming at it from very different perspectives than you. And so when I talk about interests, this is where I'll hit that. right? And it really does come down to talking about and learning about others' interests. Next question is, how much information should be shared during a negotiation to build trust without weakening your position? So we're going to demonstrate that specifically with our negotiator's dilemma game. How do you balance secure, favorable terms in negotiation with preserving long-term relationships? So I'll talk about that head on, right? So one of the things that we're always trying to balance in principled negotiation is the substance and the relationship. And again, what you heard from the ethics panel sets that up perfectly. I mean, they teed up my talk. And then lastly, what is one negotiation mistake you commonly see, and what advice would you give to professionals and students to avoid it? And I'll talk about that. This will be my last talk, because it's not embedded in the game that we're going to talk about. But I will talk about some. I actually have two. All right. So what is interest-based or principled negotiation? So I call it the language of collaboration, right? So the idea here is you're working with somebody else, you're communicating together in some form or fashion to try to explore what's possible, right? So it's not simply to try to get the most that you can out of this negotiation, but you can think about it as an exploration. And it's a way of seeking what we call joint gains, right? It's trying to find that win-win and how we can do that. So in negotiation, there are three domains in which we constantly are thinking about and need to pay attention to. Substance, right? That's the thing you're negotiating over, right? The other part that is critically important is the relationship. Now, not all negotiations do you need to preserve a relationship, right? You can make that choice. So buying a car from somebody you'll never buy a car from again, probably don't need to preserve that relationship. So it may be much more of a competitive type negotiation. And then the third part is the process in which these negotiations take place. So when we think about how to evaluate a particular negotiation, these are the three things that we take a look at, right? Was how did people come out in terms of the negotiation, the substance? What's the former relationship before and after? Is it better? Is it worse? And then lastly, what was the process? Was it fair? Did people consider this to be a fair process? Did it work for them? So those are the things that we pay attention to. And we know negotiations fail for lots of reasons. We tend to think oftentimes in sort of win-lose perspectives, right? Or we don't have an approach a systematic approach to preparing or conducting or evaluating our negotiations. And in the course that I teach, I have students reflect on every negotiation. We do a significant reflection on that negotiation. And in real life, one should learn, every time you negotiate, you should learn something from that to become a better negotiator. So if we don't have those skills, it's difficult sometimes to negotiate. There are also, cultural and institutional norms, ego, emotion, all of those things that make negotiation difficult, or can make them difficult. But there's ways that we can improve our own negotiation capabilities. So what we're going to do, I'm going to introduce this game. And step one is that, and I want everyone in this room to be participating in this game. It's a 4-person game. So if you're at a table with 4 people, that's great. You're going to play with those 3 other people. If you're at a table with 2 people, you're going to need to find somebody else to play with. So this is the hardest part of this entire game, is I'm going to ask you to sort out, this may take a few minutes, to find a place that you can find 3 other people to play this game and sit at the table with them. So look around, figure out how you're going to make a foursome in this room, okay? And there are empty tables. You can occupy an empty table, but find 3 other people. There's a group of 3 over here. Oh, you got 4? You got 4, got 4, got 4. Well, these are quick. Now, the math doesn't always work. If you cannot find, if things sort out in like, it's like musical chairs, you're the only person in the room who can't find 3 others, you can be an observer, okay? And just watch what's going on, because you'll learn from observing as well. Okay. Also at your table, you will find a sheet that looks like this, okay? So it's called Negotiator's Dilemma Score Sheet. Everybody should have one of those sheets in front of you, okay? If you don't find one, there's some sitting around in some of the empty tables. Make sure you've got a score sheet, okay? You're also going to need a writing implement, a pen. I have discovered that these pens have about 3 words in them of ink. I've used 6 of them already. But if you have your own pen, well, maybe yours are better loaded than the ones at my table. But find a pen, because you're going to have to use the pen to score your score sheet, and I'll show you how to do all of that. Also, you should find at your table 2 note cards, right? So find 2 note cards. If you don't have 2 note cards, we've got writing pads on the table as well, and you can just pull off pieces of paper and use that. So these are going to be the cards that you're going to play. So you can either use the index cards or note cards on your table. If they're not enough, just use the pieces of paper on those small notepads, okay? You're going to have 2 of them, okay? Everybody has 2 of them. On one of them, write an X, okay? So on one of the note cards, you're going to put an X. On the other note card, you're going to put an O, okay? So this is like tic-tac-toe, X's and O's. So you've got 2 note cards. So now you have a score sheet, a pen, and 2 note cards, okay? We're ready to go. All right. So the negotiator's dilemma is what this is called. And if you know anything about game theory, this is called prisoner's dilemma as well. It's a fun little game. And the object here, don't forget this, you are to maximize your score, okay? That's it. That's the rule of the game. Well, there are other rules, but that's your objective. And you're going to do that without paying attention to how others do. Meaning that if you do well and others do well, that's great. If you do well and others do poorly, oh, that's great. You do well, okay? And keep that in mind in this game. Sometimes you can lose sight of that very simple objective. You're going to play in 4-person groups. We've got 2 cards, X's and O's. All right, so let me show you how to score this. So the way the game is played is I'll go 1, 2, 3, go. And on go, you're either going to play an X or an O. You're going to put it on the table. So you're going to put an X on the table or an O on the table. So if everybody puts an X on the table, your score for that round is a -1, right? So if we see 4 X's, each person in the group gets a -1 on that round. If we have 3 X's and 1 O, each X gets a +1, and the O gets a -3, okay? If we have 2 X's and 2 O's, the 2 X's are worth 2 points each, and the 2 O's are worth -2 each. If we have 1 X and 3 O's, the 1 X gets 3 points, and the O's get a -1 each. And then lastly, if everybody throws an O, everybody gets a point. Okay? You see that? So let me demonstrate how you're going to use your score sheet then. All right, so let's say on round one, I got to see what I put up there. 2 X's and 2 O's were thrown, and you threw an X. So, oh no, you threw an O. So your score on that round is a -2, okay, because 2 X's, 2 O's, you threw an O, your score is a -2. What you do then is carry that balance over into the your balance column. All right, so now you got a -2. Second round, there are 4 X's played. You played an X. Your score in that round is now a -1. Your cumulative score is now a -3. Third round, you play an X, everybody else plays an O. I think that's what I've got. Yep. So you get a +3. So now your cumulative score, your balance is 0. Okay? Easy enough, you get that. If there's any, like any question about how to score, just ask somebody at your table, what was the score? And we're going to start slow. We're going to go slow. We're going to play 10 rounds. We're going to start slowly and then kind of speed it up because you'll get the pace. You'll easily get your score. What else on this? I think that's it for that. So some additional rules. We're going to play 10 rounds. Oh, also noted on your sheet, there's bonus rounds. I'll describe the bonus rounds when we get to them, so don't worry about them yet. So I'm going to say no verbal communication, meaning that I don't want you to reveal verbally what you want to do or what your plan is or what your strategy or what you're going to throw, okay? So we're going to try to be as verbally silent as we can, although that's difficult in this game. There's going to be a lot of shrieks and like, I can't believe you did that, kind of thing. And then remember, just win as much as you can, okay? All right. So we're going to play the game. Are you ready? So the cadence is this. 1, 2, 3, go. And on go, throw your card. And don't be late, because somebody might say, oh, that was cheating. So you got to throw them simultaneously. Now, before you start, I'm going to give you a couple seconds. I want you to think about a strategy. What are you going to do? Okay? This is not randomized. And don't use a random strategy. It doesn't work. Okay? I'll just tell you that right outside. So think of a strategy. What are you going to do? Give it a minute. Okay. You probably have a strategy in mind. All right? Now I want you to play it. All right? So we're going to go to the first round. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. All right, so based on what you see on the table, calculate your score for round 1. Everybody got a score? And what I'll do is, when you're done scoring, I would like you to pick up your cards. That's my cue that people are ready. And this is a big room, so it's hard for me to see all of them, but that's okay. So I'm seeing most cards off the table. And pens. I see somebody writing. Okay. Are we ready for round 2? Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. All right. Now you're starting to see, oh, okay. Now I'm getting a feel for what I'm up against here. So calculate your score on round 2. Now I want you to calculate your balance. So now you're going to have a running balance here. Pick up your cards when you're finished scoring. And I'm looking around. I think we're ready for round 3. Round 3, ready? 1, 2, 3, go. All right, so now you're starting to see a pattern here. Maybe your strategy has to change based on what you see in front of you and your current score. So that was round 3. Pick up your cards. We'll go into round 4. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. All right. So carry your balance. Now start thinking about what you're going to do, because round 5 is what we call a bonus round. So this is a 3 times bonus round. So you're going to multiply your individual score in this round by 3. So if you get a +1, you'll get a +3 on this round. If you get a -3, you'll have a -9 on this round, okay? So your individual score gets multiplied by 3. Also, on every bonus round, I give you 60 seconds to communicate verbally. And you can talk about the weather, or you can talk about strategy, you can talk about whatever, but 60 seconds starting now. The game will resume in 15 seconds. All right, we're going to start bonus round, round 5. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. All right, now carry your balance. Remember, you're going to multiply that individual score by 3. So if you got a +1, now you have a +3 on that. Carry your balance. All right, I'll give you another few seconds to carry out those heavy-duty mathematical equations. All right, let's go ahead and start round 6. Round 6 is a regular round. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. And I'm watching this front table, and I'm very curious about what's going on here. I was surprised to see what happened on that throw. Okay, carry your balance. Let's go ahead and do round 7, which is a normal round. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, carry your balance. All right, we're going to go into bonus round, round 8. So round 8 is a 5 times bonus round. So you're going to multiply your individual score by 5. And like any bonus round, you have 60 seconds to have a conversation starting now. The game resumes in 10 seconds. Okay, round 8. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, so multiply your individual score by 5. Carry your balance. All right. So now you've dug a hole or you guys are doing fine. Everybody's like hunky-dory here. We're going to continue on. So let's go ahead and do round 9. It's a regular round. Starting now. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. All right, carry your balance. Now you know what's coming. So this is the last round, the ultimate round. This carries a lot of weight. This is a 10-point bonus round. As I said, the last round. That may have some significance for you. And you have 60 seconds to carry on a conversation starting now. The game will resume in 10 seconds. Okay. Round 10. Ready. 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, here's what I want you to do. Tally up your score. So I want you to, what is your final score at the bottom? And then secondly, is I want you to calculate your table score. So add all of your 4 scores together to get a table score, okay? So take a couple of minutes to do that. Okay, have you got your scores tallied? Do we have a table score for every group? Please do that if you haven't yet, because now I'm going to ask you to reveal some scores here. All right. Wait for the banter to die down. So what we're going to do is, normally what I'll do is I'll tabulate everybody's scores and we'll be able to see what everybody got, but there's too many people in here to do that. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to have a show of hands, right? So for your individual scores, how many of you earned greater than 50 points? Hold your hand high. Greater than 50. Nobody in the room got greater than 50. Okay. What about anywhere between 26 and 50? How many of you got greater between 26 and 50? Okay, a smattering, a few, all right. How many of you got between 10 and 25? Okay, fair number. Okay, we're seeing more in that range. Let's go between 0 and 9. Oh yeah, okay, a few of you. All right. What about between -1 and -10? How many of you got that? Okay, fair number. Not unusual. Don't be ashamed. It's fine. How many of you got between -11 and -25? Okay, also a fair number. Okay. How many below -25? Oh, there's always going to be a few. Yeah. These are our trusting people. These are the people you want to have on your side when things get tough and you need somebody you can trust. These are the people you can trust. We'll talk about the others later. All right, group scores. So I want to see a show of hands from each group. How many groups scored greater than 50? Any group score greater than 50? Okay, we got one there. You guys, so 2 groups got greater than 50. So I think I know what was happening there. Some cooperators, maybe. How many between, what is that number? Scored between 100, oh no, I had greater than 100, greater than, oh yeah, between 100 and 50. I mean, how many were between, I guess I started at the wrong place. How many of you between 49 and 25? How many groups scored in that range? Okay, a few. How many between 25 and 0 for your group scores? Okay, there's been a lot of X's and O's played. I can see that now. And then how many of you scored as a group less than 0? Okay, so, all right, so let's talk a little bit about what does this mean. So I can detect sort of what was happening. I've done this, probably 100 times. I will tell you that only 10 to 15% of people playing the game score better than 25. Okay, just is. But there are a number of people that did. And those of you who scored greater than 25, show your hands again. Okay. How many of you played a combinations of X's and O's? You played O's as well as X's. Okay, that'll get you, that will actually get you your higher scores, is if you're strategically playing a combination of O's and X's. And then playing all X cards will yield, let me see if I can get up there. So you can get a max win of plus 75. If you throw an X every time and everybody at your table throws an O every time, you could come away with 75 points. And then, and you could, if you played an X and everybody else played an X every time, you would get a minus 25. If you played O all the time, you could get a max win of plus 25. That means if everybody plays an O every time, then your individual scores will be plus 25. And if you played an O every time and everybody else played an X every time, you would come away with a negative 75. So that's the scoring range. So the lessons I want to draw from here, and I should use this computer so I can see, I'm not always looking behind my shoulder. A couple things. I'm going to talk about cooperative strategy. We did talk about ethics this morning, and we can think about a cooperative strategy as sort of like playing that ethical game, right? I want to talk about trust and cooperation and the meaning of trust here and the importance of trust in negotiation. I'll talk about long-term versus short-term gains, some things that we always need to be thinking about in negotiation. Do you play the long game or do you play the short game? I'll talk about decision perspectives. Okay, this is maybe a new concept for you, but there are decision perspectives that you need to be always thinking about. So you always need to be thinking about these 3 decision perspectives and how they help you in negotiation. We'll talk about creating and claiming value in negotiation. That's the terminology we use. So claiming value is getting the thing you want. Creating value is making a bigger pie. And then we'll talk about the negotiator's dilemma, okay? So strategy. I'm going to do this. So from the start, how many of you started out thinking, okay, I'm going to take a cooperative strategy. I'm going to start with O. A few, okay. I'm going to demonstrate a way to think about a cooperative strategy in this game. So, so let's say in round 1, you play an O, and then the others throw their cards, and this is what you see. Okay. So you're still like, okay, I can't talk to you verbally, but I'm going to demonstrate something here. Round 2, I'm going to throw an O again. And hopefully, others will catch on. Well, in this case, it didn't happen, okay? So now in round 3, is it rational to throw another O? All right, you've been burned twice. Do you do it again? I would say no, it's probably not rational, all right, to throw another O. You know, your score is going to continue to go down. How many of you sort of dealt with that dilemma that, these people are not playing the way I want them to, so now I'm gonna burn some bridges here. And what happens when everybody throws an X? What happens? What's your score? What's everybody's score on this throw? -1. Everybody gets a -1. All right? So by behaving rationally, it's not rational to throw another O. But by behaving rationally, we end up with what's called a social trap. Okay? I would love to play another. I would just love for everybody to cooperate, but I can't. And now what we've done is we've created what we call a social trap. We don't see this very often in negotiation. A good way to think about social traps is, let's say you're driving down, you're heading to Denver, and you're on I-25. And it's a Saturday morning, and you think, we should all be driving, 85 or, well, let's say 75. And all of a sudden you're on your brakes and like things are just jammed up and you're like, what's going on? It's like Saturday morning. And so you're creeping along. 20 minutes later, you finally come to a mattress that's in the middle of the interstate. Somebody had dropped a mattress in the middle of the interstate. So you're already late, right? So you've been creeping through this traffic and you're late. And you're not going to stop and pick up that damn mattress. You're like going to gas it as you head south, right? So that's called a social trap. There's no rational reason for any of us to pick up that mattress, right? Once we're past it, we're on our way. Yet we're delaying traffic. We're holding up people's lives behind us, but we're not thinking about that, okay? So there's also another social trap that I find very interesting here in Wyoming, and that's feeding elk, right? We feed elk in this state. And we can't stop feeding. Well, you know the dilemma. If you stop feeding elk, what are they going to do? They're going to eat your hay, right? So we got to feed them. So that's another example of a social trap we've sort of gotten ourselves into. And there are other instances. I rarely see it in negotiation, but it comes to play in this game. All right, let's talk about trust. Is trust an issue in this game? Nodding some heads. Like, is it the issue in this game? Can you trust people? All right. So let me ask you, is it to your advantage to be trusting in this game? I see some heads shaking. No, probably not to your advantage to be trusting. But let's flip that on the other side and think about, so being trusting is receiving others, whatever happens to you from others, right? The other side of that is being trustworthy, right? And that's saying what you mean and doing what you say. So being trustworthy is something that can benefit you in this game. Meaning that, and I saw this happen here at this front table, I gave you 60 seconds to talk, and you said, yeah, let's all throw O's. If we all throw O's, we can do this, right? And it happened. They threw O's on at least 2 of the 3 bonus rounds. So that's being trustworthy. And, it worked. Everybody goes, yeah. I wasn't sure if that was going to happen. In negotiation, the one thing that will be in your favor, and I look for this in multi-party negotiations all the time, who is modeling trustworthy behavior? Because that's the person that I'm going to be sort of focused on and asking questions of, getting other people to focus on that person because I want them to model that behavior in the negotiation. Because being trustworthy is everything. Because if you can't trust the person you're negotiating with, and this is what we'll get to in the negotiator's dilemma, you may not provide some information that might be helpful to them. And it could also be helpful to you because you can't trust what they're going to do with that information, okay? So trust is critical, critical. So when I'm working with a group of people and through a negotiation, I don't do trust building exercise, none of that stuff. But what we do is I'm delaying critical decision making in that negotiation. These things take place over months. I mean, I've been involved in one that took 3 years to get to final resolution, but it was a 70-part negotiation. It was really complex. They typically, the projects that I engage in typically last about 9 months to a year, in which people, at first they come to the table, they don't trust each other. I know who you are, I know the group you represent, I don't really like you, or I don't really like your organization, or I have perceptions about your organization that are probably wrong, but I'm going to act on those perceptions, right? And it isn't until you become familiar with the people that you're negotiating with that you realize, oh, I was wrong about that. Yeah, he's actually a really nice guy. I can start to trust him. So what I'm doing, and when I'm leading people through these multi-party negotiations, is like I'm delaying the point to where we're going to try to reach agreement until I feel that people are starting to get to the point where they can trust one another, because it's going to be hard, right? People are going to have to say something that they regret, like, no, I can't do that. Sorry, John, it's not going to work. And if you can't do that in a trustworthy environment, it's going to cause problems, right? So trust is critical. It's everything. Okay, short-term and long-term gains. How many of you burned a bridge today? Like on round 10, okay? And it was fine because that was part of the game, right? I told you do as well as you could, right? And to do as well as you could, if you took that to the extreme, you had to burn a bridge, okay? Now, what I thought was really interesting in this morning's talk about ethics was this whole idea of we're in this together, we're playing the long game together. And it's true. I've done this work in other parts of the country. I will tell you, in Wyoming, it was a breath of fresh air. I came from the East Coast. I used to work at North Carolina State University for a long time. There were people, you could be sort of anonymous there, right? It's a state of 10 million people, now maybe 12 million, right? That doesn't happen here. So reputation is everything. And it makes it so much easier. The work that I do here in Wyoming, it's contentious, it's difficult, but people, are really, reputation is everything, and they play straight up. I've always felt that my work in Wyoming has always been the most rewarding because people say what they mean and they do what they say, right? And I find that to be really refreshing. Doesn't happen everywhere. So one of the things that you need to be thinking about in your negotiation is, are you going to play the long game? I would say if you're going to be working in Wyoming, you're going to be playing the long game, all right? You're going to see these people again. So you need to be thinking about, am I going to burn a bridge or not? Okay, so let's talk about perspectives, all right? In this game, I asked you, your objective was to do as well as you could, all right? And then I asked you to think about a strategy that you would take to do that. And that's what we call an individual perspective, meaning that before you start negotiating, you've got to have a pretty dang good idea of what it is you're after, what it is you can't accept, what might work, what might not work. So you've got to do your homework. You've got to have a well-honed individual perspective to do well in negotiation. And that takes practice, it takes work. You got to do the work, you got to do your homework. I think the example of the woman who set the information on the table, she had done the work and said, I know what you guys are, what you got on the table, and I'm not going to accept, 67 cents on the dollar, right? She did the work. So the book I show is called Smart Choices. It's one of the books that I have students read in one of my courses to understand what it is that you need, primarily in a negotiation, but it's actually all about making good decisions. It's worth picking up. It's an easy book to read. It's got some really life, I mean, I used it, so I was at North Carolina State. I got a job offer to come to Wyoming, and I used the methods in this book to make a decision about should I stay in North Carolina or should I move to Wyoming. I came to Wyoming. It was a good choice. Probably the best choice that I ever made professionally. So a well-honed individual perspective is necessary. So in this game, I asked you to think individually, but your predominant perspective is what we call the interactive perspective. So your payoff depends on what others do. So that interactive perspective is critical. You have to know sort of like how your fellow negotiators will react to, let's say, a particular proposal. It's sort of the game in game theory. It's I think that you think that I think that I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do that, right? So it's that interactive perspective, and you really have to have a well-honed interactive perspective. So if you float a proposal or an offer, and it sinks like a lead balloon, you didn't do your work. You didn't really understand clearly that interactive perspective, how others would react to what you're doing, and to be thinking 3 moves ahead in that negotiation. That's called the interactive perspective. So that's the predominant perspective in this game, okay? The third is what we call the joint perspective, and the book I show is Getting to Yes. Again, if you want to get a good book on negotiation, this is the one. These guys have made millions on this book. I picked it up back in the 80s, and that's what changed everything that I do, my work. I'm an economist by training, and I moved fully on to decision-making and negotiation after learning some of these things. But the joint perspective is this notion that it doesn't necessarily have to be a zero-sum game. And there are ways that we can cooperate and still get what it is that we need, right? So it's that notion is help me help you, okay? Meaning that you give me something, I'll give you something back. It's the norm of reciprocity. We as humans have that sort of built in. You give me something, I'll give you something back. So that joint perspective says, okay, how can we make this win for both of us or for all of us, okay? So again, having those 3 perspectives will do you well in negotiation: the individual, the interactive, and the joint, okay? All right, let's talk about creating value. This notion of creating value in negotiation. It's really important. So we create value with the O card, meaning that if we all throw O's, we can all get a point, right? And we create value by being open and truthful, and I have an acronym there called FOTE. That's full, open, truthful exchange in the negotiation, right? So full exchange means I'm going to provide you with information that is important for you to know about me, the things that I need, the things that are where I'm coming from in this negotiation. And as I begin to trust you, I'll give you more information, right, that might help you as well. Open means I'm open to what I'm hearing from you, right? I want to listen to you. I want to learn from you, and I want to understand what makes you tick. So full and open is just that 2-way communication. Truthful is I'm not going to lie to you. So full, open, truthful exchange is what we use to expand the pie, so to speak. We create value in the negotiation by talking about what's possible, by exploring alternatives that we didn't think about before. Like, oh, that's a really good idea. I hadn't thought of that, right? That is the place that we create value in the negotiation. Claiming value is the X card, right? So I'm going to, round 10, I'm going to have to play the X, right? I'm going to claim value. Now, we can think about it both positively and negatively, right? Positively is we always have to claim value in the negotiation. That's what it's about, right? We're going to claim value at some point. Now, the problem is, and this is one of the things that I'll talk about, is one of the errors that I see people make, is they claim value too early, right? They haven't finished exploring what's possible. They reach an agreement, everybody goes, man, that was hard. I'm glad we've got agreement, we're done. Like, I think you can do better than that, okay? So this notion of claiming value, we can be competitive and value claimers in that way. So one of the problems in negotiation is when you have a value claiming, a competitive negotiator with a negotiator who wants to sort of share information, create value. That mix doesn't work, right? Particularly if that value claiming negotiator never wants to sort of participate in any sort of win-win negotiating. I've seen that happen, and I've seen negotiations fail because of that. And it becomes a real mess, a real problem. I had one guy, this is a sort of a story, but this is a hydropower negotiation, long drawn-out negotiation over water releases. This is on the East Coast. And this guy was just the kind of guy that got on your nerves. And like I said, this was a 3-year negotiation. By the end of that negotiation, they were ready to strangle the guy. And he eventually dropped out. But, I mean, he was, and we do what we call a group charter, set the rules of the negotiation on these complex negotiations. And I was working with Duke Energy, that was the utility company. And then we finished that negotiation and started another one on another river basin. And they demanded, Duke Power did, in the charter, we need to figure out a way to kick people off. Because this guy definitely needed to be kicked off. He was poisonous to the whole process. It was so difficult. Okay. So value claiming can have negative consequences if you never, if it creates an obstacle to value creation. So then the negotiator's dilemma is this. If I share information with you that could help you, you could use that against me, right? So if I can't trust you, I'm not going to share that information with you. If I don't share that information, then money, what we call money, will be left on the table. There will be value that will be unclaimed. There will be value that we could have gotten out of that negotiation that we didn't, because I couldn't trust you enough to divulge that information. So then the question becomes, the dilemma is, then how much information shall I provide? So we talked about full, open, truthful exchange. But one of the things that we have to start with in the beginning is maybe partial, open, truthful exchange, right? Until I can trust you, I'm not going to tell you everything. So the dilemma then is, how do we play the O card? How do we play that game in which I'm going to throw the O and know that we can all win if we all throw O's if you're going to throw an X on me? If you're going to throw an X on me, I can't do it, okay? That's the dilemma. Okay, so there's lots of lessons there. I talked about strategy, I talked about trust, I talked about burning bridges, so the long game or the short game. I talked about those those perspectives, the individual, the interactive, and the joint. And then we talked about creating and claiming value, okay? A lot of good lessons out of this little game. And all of those really, from what you've just done in the conversation, or what I've just told you, sort of like form a basis then for, oh, okay, now I can start to think about, oh, maybe my next negotiation I might do a little differently, now that I have some additional information. I'm going to talk very briefly about what we call, what is principled negotiation. And it's basically this, that agreements are based on all parties' assessment of what they need, their interests. So it may be some things about what you want, but I'm talking about what you need, okay? There's a difference. And your interests. So, if you're a rancher, your primary interest is, I need to continue ranching. I'm going to pass this ranch down, to my children. So one of my interests is I want to maintain ranching. I want to keep ranching, right? So everything that I'm going to do is going to be sort of focused around that particular objective. So we have to understand and know what those interests are, and we're going to then use that in our negotiation. Number 2, value is created before it's distributed. I talked about, distributing value too early. Number 3, value is distributed based upon agreed upon standards. Okay, I haven't even touched on that. But when we start to think about, okay, is this a good solution to the problem we're focused on, right? Is this a good option? Is my offer a good offer? Okay. How do we judge that? What are the standards we use to judge that? One of those is, does it meet my interests? That should be your chief standard. Is it meet the things that are important to me? If it doesn't, then no, I can't take that offer. So, and another standard is fairness. In negotiation, it always comes up about fairness, and we have to have a conversation about what does actually fairness mean. And we get that resolved, and so that's another standard we use. We also use technical standards like, is it legal? Can we afford it? All those things that sort of are easy for us to use as standards in our negotiation. And then lastly, commitments are made to implement the agreement. Okay, so that's basically it. That's the basic playbook for principled negotiation. So interests then are those, it's the larger part of that iceberg. It's what drives people, it's what motivates people to say, this is a good option, that's not a good option, okay? Because it serves or doesn't serve my interests. So the purpose of negotiation, this comes out of that Getting to Yes book, and I'm gonna read this here. So the purpose of negotiation is not necessarily to reach agreement. The purpose is to explore, that's the key word here, is to explore whether you can satisfy your interests better through negotiation than you can by pursuing your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Okay, what is that? So we all come into a negotiation with, or should be coming in a negotiation with a good understanding of what it is that if this negotiation fails, what am I going to get, right? Or if this negotiation fails, what's my next step? Can I negotiate with somebody else? So we're always judging sort of the outcome by what our BATNA is. And we have BATNA, the best alternative to our negotiated agreement. We have also what we call most likely alternative to a negotiated agreement, or MLATNA. I use that a lot because sometimes they're probabilistic. It could be this could happen or that could happen. Or some people act on their worst alternative to a negotiated agreement, and that motivates them as well. So to think about this then is, we talked about, I'm answering that question about how do you build trust and how to think about getting the thing that the substance and the relationship together. So this is what's called the dual concerns model. So Angela avoids John, right, down here. So in this case, Angela's direction of satisfaction is rightward, John's direction of satisfaction is upward. We can avoid each other and not negotiate. Angela could choose not to engage. Angela can compete with John and get everything that she needs, kind of burn the relationship. Angela can accommodate John. And those of you who have been married for 40 years or longer have done a lot of that. I'm one of those. Do a lot of accommodating. Angela can compromise with John, sort of split in the middle, or Angela can collaborate with John, meaning that we're going to get both a relationship and the substance together. So that's what we're attempting to do. That's the goal. So to think about then, again, using that very same diagram. So what we're attempting to do is Angela has a BATNA, John has a BATNA. If they don't negotiate, that's kind of what they get. If Angela competes, that's what she gets. If John competes, that's what he gets. We could draw a line down the middle and compromise. It could simply be a sale of a car. We're not creating any value. Or we could work to create value, shift the frontier is what we call it, add more value to what we could get out of this negotiation. And then what we're attempting to do then is to sort of move outward to that outward, what we call the frontier, right? And we continue to negotiate until we realize this is the best deal possible, and that's how we do it. Okay, last slide. So major messages. So we can cooperate or compete and do both. Trust is critical. Don't burn bridges. Sharpen all three negotiating perspectives. Share interests to expand the ZOPA. Talk about what's important to you to expand that zone of possible agreement. And then many agreements are possible, but some are better than others, meaning that we want to get out on that frontier. Last question. What is one negotiation mistake you'd commonly see, and what would you do about it? So there are two of them. One is called anchoring. So an anchor is somebody throws out a number, and that's like the number everybody sticks on, right? That's what we start talking about. It's what we start negotiating around. You could anchor, well, the problem is that we spend way too much time on that first number that's ever talked about. The second problem is, in a distributive negotiation, your anchor may not be high enough or low enough. So if I'm never going to see you again, I'm going to buy a car from you, I'm going to say, I'll give you $2,000 for that car. And you go, $2,000? Like I need 12, right? So my anchor is 2, which sort of sets the course of the negotiation. The second thing that I see very commonly is settling too early. You know, everybody's relieved that they got to an agreement, but it probably could be better if we spent a little more time talking about it. Okay? So those are the two things. So I hope you come away today with some better ideas about how to negotiate. Those of you who are good negotiators, you can always get better, learn by doing, and reflect on what you've done. All right, thanks. No questions. I'll be around for lunch if you have questions.